first launch week underway. Got done with the full week, and this is our wrap up party. So really excited that we had our first launch week from October 2nd through October 6th, 2023. And it's been exciting to get all those features out and align all those great communications and community engagement throughout the week. And so this is just an opportunity for us to talk about the week with some of our lead product architect and SMEs within the Turbot and Steampipe community. And so, first I'll introduce myself. I'm Bob Tordella, help manage sales and partnerships at Turbot and help evangelize our open source projects. And with me, we have Nathan Wallace.
Hey, I'm Nathan. I'm founder and CEO here at Turbot and spent a lot of my time working with the product team on what you've seen this week. And of course, with a great marketing team as well for this super exciting first launch week.
Yeah. And also John Smith.
Yeah, I'm John. I'm the product architect. So I do a lot of the design work around Steampipe and pipes and to some extent guardrails as well.
Yeah, awesome. And we also a special guest on the side, John Udell, was one of our community leads as well. And so thanks, John, for joining. So what I wanted to do today is really just talk about the week and really just talk through each day that we had a launch. So we actually first kicked off launch week on Sunday, October 1st. And that was really because we wanted to align with Hacktoberfest. So last year we did Hacktoberfest to work with the community, gain some excitement and momentum in giving out swag to our contributors. We've been fortunate to have a great thriving community that contributes all throughout the year, but this is a way to celebrate with them over a course of a month. And so this was our second year doing Hacktoberfest. And I know that the team has been excited to get that back, because last year we had about 38 contributors over 14 countries. Really great event that we ran last year. And so this year, super excited to run it again. So Nathan, helping lead the product team, what are some of the most interesting contributions that you saw throughout the course of the year, and what are you expecting for some to come already this calendar year?
Yeah, look, we love all the contributions, whether it's the smallest, spelling fix, or it's a whole new plugin, or changes to the CLI, or whatever they might be. To call out some specific ones, I mean, certainly, it's been really interesting watching someone like Jose play around with like what's possible with plugins like the Terraform.
Yeah.
Try to do one for Terraform providers and stuff like that, or Postgres, etc. Been really exciting watching his writing and talking about that. He did contributions as well, like for example with a new display type for dashboards or whatever, for the calendar time thing, I think was the one he did there. So those have been fantastic. We've had a ton of new plugins come in from Francois or others. Francois' stuff he did around the GitHub action was awesome, and he was really generous to contribute that actually to us. We then ran with it and took it further, as you might have seen with the action launches this week as well. So it's really a whole gambit. We get stuff in the docs, etc., and we love all of it. There's a lot of conversation on that in the Slack community as well. So, we definitely encourage people to ask questions there and work with us. We love doing that.
Yeah. And actually just even already to kick it off, we've already seen one plugin contributed, one mod as well, which is actually one of the first mods from an external contributor from Gabriel. So we're excited to work with that person and get it published in the near future.
Yeah, that'd be great. Security Hub mod, be fun.
Yeah, and for those who might be watching, Hacktoberfest also introduces new swag for the year. And so if you're interested in getting any Steampipe, Turbot Pipes, or Turbot Guardrails related shirts and stickers, this is the opportunity to contribute anything from no code to low or high code type of contributions. Anything's welcomed in exchange for some cool swag.
I'm definitely interested.
We'll put something aside for you. So that was kind of our pre-launch on Sunday. Just to kick things off for October. but really our first official day was October 2nd. And that day was mainly for major Steampipe announcements. And one of the bigger ones was around version 21. And so, John, that's a, huge features that came out with that for rate limiting, diagnostics. A lot of work went behind that for architecting what that would look like, what the user experience would be, what's the right form of syntax / configurations that would be value add for folks to leverage, and the output that comes out for them to actually do something with. And so, maybe if you don't mind just kind of talking through, why we built in those type of features into the 021 in Steampipe, and what are you excited about to see happen?
Yeah, sure. So when we first came up with the idea of Steampipe and the Steampipe database using the FTW to query the APIs in real time, we had no idea how far we'd be able to push Steampipe. The fact is that people are using this across hundreds of accounts, and it works pretty well. And over time, we've added more and more capabilities, gotten better and better at dealing with API rate limits that are out there on the server side. It's a reality. We have multiple types of plugins now. They're not all API driven. Some of them are local files and other such resources, but many of them are APIs, and all these APIs have rate limits, and they're kind of different sorts of rate limits. And over time, we've added more and more back off and retry logic in kind of different ways, because the different APIs handle them differently. And this is the next evolution of that, right? So there's been requests from users to do client-side rate limiting to avoid hitting the rate limits in the first place. And that was kind of the genesis of putting this stuff in. It's a challenging thing to design and implement because the requirements vary drastically from one API to the next. The way the AWS does rate limiting isn't the same as what GitHub does, for instance. So, it was a bit of work to put it into place, but I think we landed on something that's quite flexible, and you can use it in very simple ways. Limit concurrency with just a couple of settings. You can do that in an HCL file, and you can get very complex into limiting this specific request in this specific region for this specific account. So, there's a kind of continuum of complexity, in that rate limiting stuff. The diagnostics was actually a side effect of the rate limiting. So as we were implementing the rate limiting, we needed more visibility into what was configured, what was working, what was the impact of it. And so we added the diagnostics capabilities into that. I mean, we added the standard kind of introspection tables that we usually do for features, but the diagnostic mode, which you can control with an environment variable, allows you to get extra diagnostic information in the CTX column. And so for every row, you can get all sorts of information about not just the rate limiting, but what functions were called, et cetera. And it turns out that the diagnostic information is useful in itself, even separate from the rate limiting. And I think it helps actually learn about how the product operates. If you're a developer, it helps you troubleshoot kind of what's going on. It can help you optimize your queries. There's a lot of interesting stuff in that diagnostic information. And to take it even a step further, we introduced this concept of tags for the hydrate functions, which allows the developer of a plugin to basically put some metadata about this hydrate function. And we instrumented the AWS plugin in a way that for every hydrate call, we list the service and the API call that hydrate function makes. So now in the AWS plugin, you can actually do a select query and look at the CTX results and see what APIs were called to fetch that row, which, is quite interesting. So, all of this stuff has evolved as Steampipe has evolved, and the usage is getting larger and larger, and kind of this whole version 21 is about making it kind of industrial strength, right? Flexible for you to run really large queries, to be able to control the rate limiting, from your API side, to have more visibility into what's going on under the covers.
Yeah, no, it's it's great to see that, it's a direct response to help other people scale their use of Steampipe, but also the kind of the side effects that you had mentioned. It's great for plugin authors just to get more visibility of how to actually extend and develop on their plugins that are coming, and understand how it works and how Steampipe's operating behind the scenes. So yeah, that was really cool to see come through on the feature. The other big thing was on Monday, we basically highlighted one of the plugins called the exec plugin that can execute any command on any device. So think of local or remote hosts. You can run any type of shell command and bring that back into SQL results. And so it opens up a whole world of possibilities. I know, Nathan, you're one of the main folks behind that. What were some of the original thoughts with that? I mean, because the endless possibilities, right? And I think, for us, we're excited because it just extends the breadth of Steampipe beyond cloud into almost anything. But maybe if you just walk us through like some of the ideation originally with that, and maybe some of the use cases that you were excited about up front.
Yeah, no, part of a theme for us with Steampipe all the time is like SQL to query anything, like a unified interface to all of that stuff. And the exec plugin was like another natural step in that for me. It allows us to reach into the host, right? I mean, you want to query your cloud infrastructure, you want to query your code, you want to query into the host and see what's going on that machine. And this lets us do that. I had fun putting together, very early first cut of that, which then, of course, the team made actually good. But what was fun about that was grabbing like, the Terraform modules for provisioning, which were, robust, and they support heaps of things like bastions and all the proxies and stuff like that. So bringing that in, and basing it on that allows so much possibility for talking to those different hosts, like you said. We've had people ask before about talking to routers or other things which support SSH and stuff like that, but don't, have easier APIs to talk to. So this unlocks a lot of that. The thing I really, really enjoyed about that one was just doing aggregators, actually. So being able to have a series of hosts with my SSH keys and just connect to them all and ask them all one question at the same time, right? Was really fun. Great data coming through. You could see how you could really run that for all sorts of checks or controls if you did custom mods or other stuff on top of that. So, I think that was exciting. The other part that's kind of enjoyable to me from a meta point of view, of course, is, we're huge fans of OS Query. You can't look at Steampipe and not realize that we were, at least partially inspired by OS Query, just use SQL to query stuff. This is not OS Query. OS Query is an amazing thing on its own, works on the host, talking to details about the host. This is just a bit more of a, powerful tool to reach across them all and run any command you want and deal with it from there. So it's kind of fun to come full circle back to, closer to that OS Query thing as well.
Yeah, no, it's exciting stuff, and definitely interested to see where the community takes it. And yeah, that aggregation, I mean, another feature that just lays the foundation as part of the product, and that we can benefit from it from all these different ideas.
Right.
So that's also cool to see.
And as we highlighted in that blog post, like being able to actually do true full Docker CIS, for example, now we couldn't do that before, but now we can ask the Docker service at its API for various questions. There's about half the CIS checks for Docker, but the other half of CIS now we can complete through the exec calls at that OS layer. So it really shows what's possible. There's no reason you couldn't write a CIS for Linux using it at this point. Right. It's just about how far to take it.
Yeah, for sure. So Monday is a huge day with, release of the new CLI. We have some interesting features that kind of broaden the scope of Steampipe. And then Tuesday, we focused on Turbot Guardrails. And so we had two great announcements or launches that day. One being the guardrail notifications. And so this was kind of a shift for us in the way that we operate. And Turbot Guardrails has always been around this quick detection of a change with an instant remediation. And that's how it's been architected over the years, because we want to burn down all those operational incidents or security incidents right away. The quicker that you could take the action, the easier it is to move on and move forward and correct the environment. And so the idea of notifications has always been much more of like a fire hose approach for us. Like you want to push notifications out to your SIM or to a SOC or to some other type of tool, more for logging or more for a flood of awareness. But we had all these kind of interesting patterns that we could unlock, and listening to our customers, it felt like, you know, we can actually go backwards from doing full remediation into some type of step on the way to full remediation. And that's where kind of guardrails notifications came into play. And so, you know, doing a lot of proof of concepts for with users on guardrails, you know, this is definitely a game changer for folks to kind of work their way through that full automation. But I know one of the cool features that came out of that, Nathan, was also reusing things that are already in the product, like quick actions. And so I think one of the things that we realized is that how we could be different with these notifications, and maybe if you could talk about, you know, why we're different than just an alert that goes out.
Yeah, no, like you said, from day one, we've always believed that the key goal here is to fix the problem, not just tell people there's a problem, but actually to fix it. And so we've been built the entire business, and all of our customers love the fact that we do that, instant detection of the change, record of that, and then an immediate fix for that. But like you said, sometimes that's just too fast. They want, application teams want more control. People are afraid about making a change in production, whatever it might be, right? They want more control of that process. So we've got to find a way to do that. Quick actions are the heart of that. What, Turbot Guardrails has basically like 3,500 or so automated actions. And that doesn't mean like, oh yeah, here's a few steps you could run in your CLI. It means like instant actual fixes to problems, whether it's setting up entire IAM suites or, just changing encryption on a bucket. So we took those 3,500 that were already there and working in real time and said, well, how can we make them runnable on demand? And that's what quick actions are. So that goes away from the world of like, oh, we did it already, to a world of like, hey, there's something wrong with your VPC. Here's the 3 or 4 operations you can choose to take on it by clicking one button and confirming you want to do that right now. And now with notifications, we can route that to the actual teams. So as a central DevOps group, you can set up, hundreds and hundreds of Amazon accounts or thousands of accounts like our customers do, right? And actually create notification routes for that to say to them, in real time, you literally just created this thing right now. Here's a Slack alert saying, there's something wrong with it, telling you exactly what's wrong. And here's one click you can do to fix it if you want to. If you want to fix it your own way, that's fine too, of course. Guardrails will still detect that fix and then clear the alarm. So, for us, that was like great. It brought the human back into that loop, which is what many people were looking for and asking for, as they're trying to find this balance between getting it right all the time centrally and also giving a lot of power to those application teams. So yeah, it was great to combine those quick actions in with notifications. And I think that's what really makes it sing.
I think it's a good combo too, right? Because the quick actions kind of gives you direct control over the remediation, and the notifications makes it timely. And the thing about the things that Turbot fixes is that, they're not only more dangerous the longer they're there, but the likelihood of breaking something increases the longer you wait to fix it, right? If things been out there in production for a long time, that's when people are most hesitant to kind of get in there, and the notifications combine the two. So it's up to you to fix it, but right away that it's time to address it now.
Yeah, for sure. We're excited to see that come through. I know a number of customers have already kind of adopted it and looking to scale it further with new controls that they haven't enabled, because they're looking for that type of human step in the process. And with that, one of the other announcements, or the second announcement that day, was also new tagging controls, or new tagging syntax and configurations that we've enabled to help users on the most popular control that they enable in Turbot Guardrails. I'd say almost all of our users are leveraging Guardrails to do tagging automation. And it's, one of thousands of controls that we do, but tagging is such a hard and complex problem because it's completely freeform. And so all the key value pairs that you want to enforce as a central organization, you have to depend on your developers to put in the right information at the right time, under the right context, And a lot of times it could be dynamically derived, and they might not know or have all the information on hand or even know what you want them to do. And so there's always this huge mismatch on trying to enable a global tagging strategy or very specific tagging strategies. And so Turbot's Turbot Guardrails is well suited in this, and that's why it's one of our most popular controls. But we also seen folks that, just in anything, once we kind of simplified any problem, the requirements skyrocket right away. Right. So, where people are like, oh, I just want to, put my cost center tags in, or I just want to do something, simple for us. They now want to do very complex use cases. Like, I want to match together 3 different languages and make sure that the right language is being used with the right spelling and the right casing. And I want to make sure that, the audit trail data comes through and data from ServiceNow is flowing through. It is, that all of a sudden it just starts building and building and building, which is great. But the tagging use cases have become much more complex, and the features that we came out with are to help simplify that. And I know John, and actually you, Nathan, as well, you guys worked on a lot of the syntax behind the scenes with, way we do calculated policies and how we try to simplify down how folks can do common actions or common policies in a lot simpler of a way. And so I don't know, maybe one of you want to take, what you guys kind of put into that from an architecture standpoint, how to simplify these type of policies down. And then what do you think that folks would be using the most with these features?
Yeah, well, the use cases very well, Bob. As experienced in them as anyone, and that's really where we started. We spoke with customers and said, "What are you trying to achieve here? What's the key goals?" Like things like, well, I want to know who created it, right? Or I want easier ways to bring in more context to that. I want to be able to fix spelling mistakes. I want to normalize my tags, because they're all like coming from the idea of a tagging strategy, which is quite good, but nebulous, right? And so we have to get that down to rules that can be enforced, etc. The big change we really did here actually was, the way our policies work and giving you more tools to do them. So Guardrails uses basically policies that are written in a Ginger type syntax, so it's very familiar for anyone, and then combines that with GraphQL to be able to query assets or information from your environment. So you query with GraphQL, you combine that with Ginger to produce a value of the policy. Like, I want my tags to be, cost center X, created by Bob, etc. in that information. What we actually offered basically in this improvement was a whole set of helper functions just to make that way easier to do common tricks or capabilities, like giving a map of like before and afters for fixes or spelling mistakes, like take the word env and the capitalized env and like all that stuff and turn it into the word environment just consistently, because it's really hard to do that consistently across thousands of accounts and hundreds of services and all that sort of stuff. And now it can be just automatic or instant, and that's either to enforce it or to check it, again, up to you, right, according to how you want your policies to work. So the big thing here was just giving helper functions to make those sorts of mappings, which sound easy, but are hard to do programmatically, just way, way easier for people.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm personally excited because it's someone that helps people, educate them early on, how to think about their tagging strategy and how to use Turbot to implement that. These are great accelerators.
Yeah, anytime you can take this much code and turn it into this much code, so it's more readable, that's a win.
Yes. So that was an exciting day, Tuesday. Some great guardrail announcements, and then we actually went back to some Steampipe use cases, because we just had so much within the Steampipe ecosystem, and there's so much that we left out on being able to elevate into a launch week announcement. But we started looking at a lot of the different types of plugins, the themes of activity that we were doing over the last few months, and it was kind of coming together as a story around how Steampipe is actually a really good infrastructure as code scanning, as well as a query mechanism for infrastructure as code, which is very unique. Most tools that are out there are scanning your environments and your configurations, where Steampipe can add extra value there is not only the controls and the coverage and the breadth of that, but also the ability just to query not only your files, your configurations, but also your plans, your state files, your Helm charts, your manifests, And putting that together in what basically amounted to all of Wednesday's launches is this idea of kind of select star from code or from your infrastructure as code, and then how we approach that not only within your Git your GitHub like workflow, your GitOps workflows, but also how you might use it for Terraform, how you might think about it for Kubernetes. And so there's a lot to unpack there. And so maybe just an open-ended question to you both on, in general, where we kind of fit in with a Steampipe perspective and the developer community that's been shifting left for the last few years. Where do we see ourselves in that mix, and why do we think that Steampipe is a different offering in there, and how we can add value?
Yeah, that's a good question. So first of all, the idea that you can use SQL to query anything is one of the underlying kind of principles of our strategy. And the code isn't different from that perspective. It's organized in a certain way, and so you can provide a certain taxonomy and query this stuff in a structured way. I think one of the differentiators, to your point, Bob, was that you can query it dynamically in real time. A lot of the other tools out there, they run a pass through the thing against the rules that you put in place, and they report results. With Steampipe, you can actually query it, and it basically interrogates it dynamically, and it's hard to demonstrate that to some extent because there's so many different things you may want to know about it. But for ad hoc querying of your code files, I don't know of anything else that really does it the same way. I think
just on that, there was a great user story we have from a pen tester who was trying to work out all of they were doing an analysis for a customer, and they just had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Terraform files with different things for they deploy, and they're asking what IAM roles are out there. And so they can just point this at that and just literally ask the question, what IAM roles are defined in our Terraform infrastructure, without actually having to query the info as deployed, which of course Steampipe can also do. But they didn't want to be detected doing that, right? Because part of this was sort of like a quiet pen test internally, but they could do that across the files instantly. Those sorts of questions are really valuable and very different.
Yeah, I think the also the kind of standardized question output result situation, I think we handle well with the control. The control model works well for providing pass fail type information on the evaluation of those things. And I think SQL is actually a fairly straightforward language in order to write those controls. A lot of the other tools, you also have to write them in a specific prescribed language, and some of them have their own language and stuff. And this is just SQL, just like it is for everything else in Steampipe. So the meaning of the tables, of course, you have to know, but the syntax of the SQL is the same across all of these things. I think another thing that's unique about Steampipe is that you can for Terraform, you can look at the plan, but then you can also, you can look at the original file, you can look at the planned information, and you can look at the state file and interrogate them all with the same set of queries. And you can also take a look at the resource that's deployed. It's a different table in this case. You're going to use, AWS or Azure or whatever other plugins for what what's being deployed, but you can use one tool to see views of all of those things. The Kubernetes case is even more interesting because the structure from the API is the same as the structure of the files that you pass in. It's a desired state configuration type of a model, and so you can write the query once, and you can look at it in the file, and you can look at it was deployed, and you can compare them and see if they're the same. Or before you deploy it, you can query it and see if it's going to change the value in a way that you don't expect or whatever. So I think there's a lot of power in the ability to view not just the code itself, but the things the code generates, whether those are other intermediate files or whether those are resources actually in the API that get generated from it.
I think for teams that, who work in DevOps or other things, one of the challenges is there are so many tools and so many layers to play with and so many things you have to learn, right? And you're like, I'm going to scan my files over here and I'll use this tool with this format and these outputs. And then over here, I'll do a different tool to do that thing, etc. And I think what we're achieving and, have achieved with Steampipe at this point is one tool with one set of, one syntax, one set of capabilities, one set of reports, etc., that works through all layers of that stack. Like genuinely is best in class across all layers of that stack. I mean, the Kubernetes controls we came with this week, 790 individual controls just to scan your Kubernetes layer. That's as good as anything on the market, commercial or open source today, right? Then we've got the same thing for your infra as deployed, right? At all different levels, the broadest coverage of checks and controls at each. So the ability to use one tool through all of those layers with one set of outputs, one thing you got to learn, one capability you do as a team, and then you want to do a new thing, a SaaS provider or whatever, Microsoft 365, well, Steampipe install the new thing and away you go. You don't have to relearn a new tool every single time as you're moving through that. That to me is the power of that sort of coming together, and the select stuff from shell, select stuff from cloud, select stuff from code. You can see that story really starting to integrate, and it just gives a lot of flexibility to those teams.
Yeah, especially when those teams are trying to run this programmatically in a workflow. And I think that was one of the other exciting announcements was around our GitHub actions. And you had alluded to this earlier, where one of our community members had started an initial GitHub action, so Francois did, and then allowed us to build on top of that and continue it forward. I think what's exciting about that is like being where the teams are and embedding Steampipe in those appropriate flows. But there's also some cool things that were extended in the GitHub check action to give the feedback loop back. So like John mentioned that, it's basically the control status or the state really helps with being able to give the feedback and then get to that diff of what needs to change, which is perfect in the GitHub pipeline. And so maybe you guys can talk a little bit further about the GitOps process in that.
Well, for me, the key there, of course, is you want to know when you change the file whether something's wrong or not. That's the fundamental premise. As early as possible, you're shifting left to in that. That's easier for teams. They're interested in whether it's deployed correctly. But if you're a true Terraform shop, which is hard to achieve, or a true CloudFormation shop, or whatever it might be, it's hard to achieve. But when you do, you want to know when the file is right or wrong. And the Git actions absolutely give that to you. Instant scanning of that, annotations against the pull request, a full scan in there, and also push it out the pipes if you want a central place to keep all of those reports or those findings on the way through from the myriad of repos you might have those things in. So to me, that was super powerful. It's a key part of workflow. And again, one tool that now works at the different layers of your stack, which I think is fantastic. So that was great. The thing I think is also great about the Git actions, which we didn't really highlight because we were sort of on message around the code, but you run any scan you want. Scan your infrastructure as it's deployed. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just Steampipe check, right? And that's, again, the power of it. So, if you want to do other checks in your Git workflow, like actually check that it is correct out there as part of that process or whatever, it's all just a, integration of way at this point. Which is, the power of sort of being one thing.
Yeah, if you are a true infrastructure as code shop, then if something's broken, the fix is in the file, and the GitHub action makes it right. It does it in real time as you change the file and points to where it is. Like, those annotations give you the section where it is. Because it's in GitHub, it's all logged in a kind of standard way. And I think it really does kind of complete the thought there for infrastructure as code, that, ability to not just check it in real time, but to integrate with the tool in a native way where you can see the annotations in the code, in the line, the offending line, and that's shared with anybody that, that shares the GitHub repo.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I mean, that was an exciting series of stuff. And we've, like Nathan mentioned, we have so many controls that are just out of the box, ready to use, but also just completely extensible. So everything we're talking about, again, is just open source. You can remix, reuse, bring your own. And I think there's just a ton of value there to keep consistent, and it basically extensible platform that you could just bring into the mix of all the tools and APIs and codes and logs that you're trying to query and interrogate. And so the following day on Thursday was all about Turbot Pipes. And this is, for those who aren't familiar with Turbot Pipes, it is what was once known as Steampipe Cloud, and now under the umbrella of the kind of the Turbot Pipes, Turbot Guardrails type of family. We've been in preview for a bit, and since that time, we've had over 1,500 users sign up, get some value out of Pipes as either individuals or large organizations bringing in their team or multiple teams into the fold to leverage its features for querying, for reporting, sharing those queries, sharing those reports, being able to take point in time backups or snapshots of their reports and then share those around. It's just really great centralized features that are going to help these teams be able to collaborate on their data that was once maybe coming from Steampipe in their pipelines or on their local. Now they can run it in a central way. And this is so been in preview and now it's generally available. And so this was a huge announcement for us and basically a number of folks in the company working very cohesively together to make that work and get that officially launched yesterday. So that was really, really an awesome moment for us to get another product out there. And so that was great. And to help our current preview users transition into the free tier or into a team usage model. And so, I know, part of, so many things that we had to do to get Pipes ready, but one of it was around the principles of what we wanted this service to be. Coming from an open source community and giving them another tool or SKU to work with, what did we want them? What did we want that transition to be for them? What is the value that we're trying to give to the developers? And then let alone their team, if they find value to bring others into the fold. So Nathan, I know you put a lot of thought into kind of that design, that pattern, and where we want the service to be offered to the different types of personas in our community.
Yeah, so we really think about Pipes as being this sort of cloud intelligence and security positioning, right? I mean, there are security tools out there, of course, already. There are other, tools for querying different data, but we think it's sort of a slightly different problem there of like, how do you understand everything going on in that ecosystem, bring that together? That's sort of the intelligence piece, report on it, understand it. And obviously security is a really key use case to that. So we're trying to focus there. The big difference, though, between our open source offerings like Steampipe and Pipes is really, the individual developer versus aiming at trying to build a great experience for a team or a group of people working on it, right? And we internally refer to that as like, many people doing many things over time versus, one person doing one thing at a time, right? And so that's really sort of our guiding light on the difference between the two things, right? And we're trying to optimize the features in Pipes for many people doing many things over time, and that might mean working as a group, role-based permissions, all that sort of stuff, doing many things like data tank, big feature we announced yesterday, we'll talk about, I'm sure here, but basically larger scale, more accounts, etc., collaborating on that. And then over time, snapshots, creating that sort of flow of the data over time. Whereas Steampipe really is amazing for that, when you just want to query it right now, live, and do those sorts of things. So, that's sort of one of the principles we build on for that. The other one for us is really thinking hard about the developer, the DevOps team, and how do we build a seamless experience up to that? We don't want another silo that's sitting with another team where they can see some reports and then lob those over the fence, to others in the organization. We wanted to create a place where you can build custom mods and deploy them, where you can build your own queries and run them, where you're in control of how often you want things to run or what you want them to do, right? And really give a true DevOps experience to that. And we tried to reflect that in everything. Our pricing, we believe, reflects that, free for developers, easy to start for teams with a usage-based model. Like, you don't have to come in and create a massive, security budget or whatever it is to get started with this thing. Start running a few queries, start running some controls, start getting some snapshots, start sending those around with Slack notifications. Just start and build up gradually through that, putting you in control of that sequence. And we're trying to reflect that in every aspect of the platform, whether it's full Terraform support, the APIs, that sort of thing. So that's sort of how we think about it when we're coming out with that. We thought about that through our pricing. We thought about that through the capabilities we offer, the developer focus, the incredible documentation that's available for it, like really trying to make that thorough, thought out, so you can build with it, right? That's where we want it to sit in the market. I'm sure John will be able to add to that in a more eloquent way.
I'm not sure about that. Yeah, no, I mean, it's more than just a hosted Steampipe, right? We really are trying to, layer on capabilities and features for, again, many people doing many things over time. And, in terms of the team plan, which has been a good kind of a big focus recently around kind of organizations in the team plan, it's all about collaboration, right? It's about being able to share things, work together on things. And not to say that you can't collaborate on Steampipe CLI, but we don't optimize for that there. We optimize for it in a cloud. And I think there are capabilities of a cloud shared instance that make it possible to do things there that you can't really just do in a simple fashion in the CLI. So I think we really are trying to concentrate on making this useful for teams, not just for individuals at the level of Steampipe. Of pipes. So, and I think we're continuing to expand on that, right? So as we grow, we'll add more enterprise features, and then the enterprise offering will concentrate on even more security compliance related things at a even larger level. So as we grow, I think we'll find that the features that we add to pipes are all about multiple people and the processing all of this stuff over time and larger scale.
One of the things that's been fun for us is just doing it in public. So being in preview for a long time, like that's scary. You're putting it out there early, but you get real feedback from real users, showing how they're using it, and that helps us shape where we're going. We love that about open source. We love that about what we're doing with pipes. So 100% we want to hear from people about what's working, what's not working, what you want to see. That's what we enjoy doing. We've shared more information about, we have formal pricing in place for developers and team. We've shared what we expect our pricing and position to be for enterprise, and we're working on that, now. So basically, tell us where you want to go. That's what we love.
Yeah. I think it actually makes Steampipe stronger also. Like a lot of the work that we've done around Steampipe is to increase scale, and we're operating at larger and larger scale in the pipes environment because of we have capabilities like Data Tank that are enabling us to store things and query larger and larger sets of data, but still be responsive. But the engine behind that is still Steampipe. And so even though some of this work is in the pipes direction, the engine that drives it is still Steampipe, and that engine gets refined because of the pipes product.
Yeah, it definitely is a nice kind of flow that we have with the community driving forward, not only Steampipe and pipes, but then back into the products, and it's a kind of a continuous improvement flow. And that one that you just mentioned is Data Tank. I mean, that was a huge announcement along with the pipes being generally available. We tied that to launch because it's fundamental for that team use case, right? Doing many things over time, you need persistence, right? We're very shocked, like as you mentioned, John, that there was so much that we could get away with live queries and actually not doing any type of database storage in the background. But as our customers or community has grown to like thousands of connections and all different complex queries and join use cases, that model might not work for all those complex use cases. And that's where having persistence in your environment can help you scale, for your use cases. And so with Data Tank, I know, John, you're instrumental on that feature behind the scenes. What was some of the things that you saw from the community there, or what are the things you're most excited about with the Data Tank feature?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of existing tools that are so-called CMDB tools that are ETL tools to get information from APIs and store them in a database. I think the perspective of Data Tank is a little different. And the hypothesis that we have, which hopefully will prove to be true, is that you don't need to store all of this stuff. And in fact, you don't necessarily want to. The thing is, the days of just a kind of old-fashioned CMDB, they seem to be numbered or over. In fact, everywhere I've ever worked that tried to have a CMDB didn't quite have a functioning one, because it's a very difficult problem to solve, getting all this information in there updated. And the thing about the cloud is that by the time you've stored the information, the resource might be long gone anyways, right? So it's a hard problem to solve. The other thing is, in AWS alone, there's like hundreds of resources out there, and every day there's a new one and there's changes to them, right? So I don't believe that you need to store all of it, but there is stuff that you do. The stuff that's, number one, that's most important to you. Number two, that's slowest to query because there's a lot. Or three, that has really large scale. Those are the biggest areas where you want to store them. You want to optimize the query time by having all of that stuff there. And that's especially important for the things that everything touches, or that are slow, or that you have a lot of. So, we have, for example, we have a single AWS account that has, like, I think it's 60,000 SNS topics in it, including like 20,000 in a single region or something. And Steampipe can query it, but it takes a long time to get all of those results. And by putting that into a data tank, we can get the update out of band offline. And when you go to query it, it's super fast. On the other hand, we don't have a lot of EC2 instances or RDS instances, and querying them real time works just fine. So instead of going to all the trouble to do all the setup for all of that other stuff, the idea of the data tank is that you use it as a kind of prefetched cache for the stuff that's important for you, for your use cases, and you let the other stuff happen in real time. And what we concentrated on was try to make it as easy as possible to do, because ETL, everyone hates ETL because it's complicated. And the more stuff that you ETL, the more scalability problems you have, the more sync problems you have, the more noise you have. Trying to find the signal from the noise when you're trying to update, 100,000 different tables is more difficult than when you're trying to do 20, for instance. So yeah, I'm very interested in how people use it, whether that approach it works well for people. I'm hoping that it does, and kind of seeing what the response is, and being able to, again, continue to scale to larger and larger environments, in terms of both the number of accounts as well as just the number of resources.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bob, I just wanted to say, I think data tank's important, and we're very excited about it. It adds great capability. But I don't want people to forget, just exactly like John was saying, how amazing live queries are. Like, if you're running a Slack job to run a CIS to put an alert in your account, you can do that in free tier level of pipes. So that's that will work, a daily job, right? Which all often people want, and it'll work live without a problem. And what do you care if it takes a minute to run? You're only getting a Slack notification when it's done anyway, right? You don't have to wait for it. So a lot of it's about whether you're, as a human, wanting to browse around it and play with it in real time, which means you want more responsiveness, or if it's a very large scale. But to John's point, it's very expensive to collect all this data all the time, keep it all up to date. That's a massive problem we're creating for ourselves when we accept the premise that we have to do that. If we reject that premise, right, and say you don't actually have to get it all, and a lot of it you can do live, then to John's point, you totally reduce the scope of the problem, you reduce the cost to run the problem, you make the whole thing way, way, way more manageable. That's what lets us do incredible things in our low price free tier model that we're using with pipes, right, relative to what others might be able to achieve, because of that sort of different philosophy, way of thinking about it. But now you can go way further as well, finding a balance that's right for you in your org. I mean, even change the timing, update one thing a week, update another thing daily, update one every hour, it doesn't matter. And by the way, all the lives tables still exist. So even if you're updating that one daily and that's easiest for you, you can still query behind it using schemas, right? And just go straight to the live table when you need to do that. So you start to mix the best of both, right? The live data and the already cached data. All right, I'm excited about it. So I'm prattling on. I'll hand back to Bob there.
Yeah, I mean, that is the exciting part, is that flexibility for you to turn those dials on whatever, not only the tables, but also on custom queries. So joining of data, multiple tables at once to bring that data back, almost like a materialized view in a way, in a persistent way. So there's a lot of use cases, plus all the dashboards work with all that. So if you store that data, it just becomes part of how the dashboards operate as kind of the first table that it hits. So some really cool stuff once people start to get to use it. Really excited to see the use cases that emerge from that. And one of the other big announcements that day was around our integration with Zapier. And actually one of the things closer to me, because I do a lot of business applications. I have different types of sales and marketing type of tools. Trying to pass data to different locations. We use Zapier for different things in our finance org, but it's not necessarily once you want to open up the door a little bit further, it becomes very complex to use for business users, and it's really kind of in this middle where there's not an easy way to maybe enrich data within that, to query data, or to trigger other types of data that might not be in their plugin library, or to have very custom queries to then trigger something into it. And so, one of the things that we did with the Zapier is come up with a trigger, not only from some Turbot pipes. So when there's a new result that comes through your query, it then triggers an actual zap. But then also is to use Turbot pipes in that in those zaps in order to then get data and enrich it, which I actually just built a few today and super excited about. But that opens up the whole door of bringing in workflow and automation, and very similar to what we did with the GitHub Actions, and looking at where are those pipelines within the organization for the DevOps team, developer teams, for maybe more business folks, and how does pipes just become the central ground for that type of data sharing and collaboration. So I don't know, Nathan, you want to take a stab at kind of just talking through the what we're excited about from enabling more DevOps into these other type of workflow tools that maybe have been unserved to that persona.
Yeah, I think the Zapier is a great thing to integrate with, because 5,000 apps out there you can start building on. Like, you can now really do DevOps with Zapier, which we were reflecting about it on it because we use a lot internally for other things, and we were kind of like, why don't we use this more for simple things like notify people when they created an access key, or enriching data, etc. And it's just not really optimized for that, partly because it's a no-code interface, which is less attractive to that team, but also you didn't maybe have the data or the tools you need to do that. We think bringing that pipes data into that really unlocks a lot of capability for that to let you run those flows. In terms of why generally that automation is important, that's the lifeblood of DevOps, right? You got to have automations to make things better, like to smooth your processes, make them more consistent, give you more freedom, right? And we believe, and we practice a lot at Turbot in doing that. Like, we're constantly asking, how do we make this smoother, more efficient, more routine, right? More standardized. Sometimes it gets pretty fussy, whether it's the spacing around logos or the details, but we like that because it gives us the freedom to move faster, because we know what the rules are and the framework is for moving. And I think it's the same in DevOps. You want to have more and more of that flow locked in, automated, running for you in a trusted way, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. And now you've got space to do more innovation, build another workflow, tackle your next problem, and that cycle just picks up more and more. So whether it's putting that straight into your GitHub Actions for reviewing your code immediately, having automated daily scans from pipes of your existing cloud footprint or other things to make sure you're on top of that, sending that through to Slack. We use that a lot for our GitHub issues and things as well, right? Or if it's like putting it in Zapier to detect a bad state, make sure you're routing it to the right person for immediate action. Like, all of those things are just really setting up your organization for better security, better compliance, better consistency, better running, right? It makes our lives better, so we can spend more time doing the fun stuff, like of innovating and moving forward, rather than running around just playing whack-a-mole with issues in the organization, right? And to me, that's the heart of why that automation is important. And by the way, of course, Turbot's first product, Guardrails, is built on that fundamental idea of like, let's constantly and immediately fix these problems so that we can know what our footprint is and we're always in great shape. As we joked about previously, it's not easy being green, right? And so these sorts of tools help you get to an okay state and keep your dashboards green. And without automation, I don't see any way you can get there. It's just too hard.
Yeah. And so that was a great day for Pipes yesterday, the announcement of it, the Zapier integration, as well as Data Tank. And today is our last day, and we wanted to focus on our community today. So we had two announcements. One was a case study for ourselves and how we manage our own GitHub repos, and then also one was to also announce our Turbot changelog, which kind of unifies all of our product changes across Turbot Guardrails, Pipes, and Steampipe, but then also have very specific change logs for people to subscribe to and bring those notifications to where they are, like in our Slack community, in their own feeds, etc. And so, John, as someone who builds a lot of documentation and manages a lot of data at scale, what are you excited about from a Turbot changelog perspective? Like a lot of our change logs were kind of in private repos, and then they were brought out to different lights into documentation, like in Guardrails. But now we just have one public flow. And so, maybe if you just talk about kind of how it was before, where it is now, and where we're going with it.
I mean, I like just having it all in one place more than anything else. It's also, I think, because it's all in one place, there's been a focus a little bit more on consistency and quality of what is in there as well. So not only is it in one place, but I think it's been to the benefit of the quality of the change logs as well. There's a lot of stuff going on. Like we have a lot of repositories and plugins and mods and stuff that is, our stuff, that is community stuff that, we like to, bring forward, because the community's part of Steampipe as much as we are. And to be able to see all that stuff in one place is great, and be able to have a consistent format for all of it also makes it just a lot easier to parse and to kind of find what's important to you.
Yeah. And I like how the one of the things is being able just to notify into our, like one of the things that we were benefiting from internally was we were sending ourselves notifications of all the changes that were happening. We were so well informed on every little piece of thing that was changing. And having this in a public setting enables us to actually feed those subscriptions to our community. And now we just came out with a new Slack channel to kind of push all those in the community. And then that starts up threads where we can have conversations with folks right there about the change. And so it's a nice collaborative way to kind of engage with folks about the particular features that were just announced.
Yeah, I think it's flexibility in how you get your information too. Because I am a pull guy. I like to go look things up more than I like to get notifications. I can't keep track of all the notifications that I get. Nathan is a kind of stream of information person who likes to get all this stuff and kind of feel it all come through. And I think the way the changelog is now, you have the option to handle that information in the way that's appropriate for you.
Yeah, I think two comments I'd make. One, as social media has sort of evolved a lot over the last year, we were using Twitter a lot. This gives us, the flexibility to still use it, but really now we have our own place where we own these updates. They're up, on our microblog of the changelog, if you like. So it's great for us in terms of feeding that to the product and other things. So technically it's good. But to be honest, the thing I feel most about the changelog is pride. Like, this is an incredible team producing an insane amount of top quality work. And when you just see that stream coming through, as John said, I like a stream of stuff. When you see that stream every day of like, boom, Steampipe update, boom, another Guardrails mod, boom, pipes improvement, like it is an incredible amount of work. And just to me, this change brings all that together and just makes me feel incredibly proud and excited for the organization. So
yeah, Yeah, and you know, with that, with the other announcement that we came out with, was our own case study for how we're trying to actually manage the change that's coming from our community, and how we keep track of that, how we respond to it, and making sure things don't get stale, making sure that we're interacting with the contributors. And so, you know, the recent post that we just had was around our lessons learned, and also us using our own tooling to help us kind of burn down those issues and those PRs and making sure that we're timely. Yeah, Nathan, why don't you maybe just talk through some of those lessons and just summary, and you know, some of the outcomes that we've experienced by just tracking that a bit better, of getting that information to us in the right communication channels.
Yeah, the blog post on that is, I think, well worth a read, to think about how to manage lots of repos internally or externally. Like it's hard doing it at this sort of scale. And we've built a heap of great tooling with Steampipe, you know, to query those for different repos, whether it's for configuration setting, issue counts, etc., snapshotting those into pipes, then building dashboards that query the snapshots to give us trend graphs. Like there's great, interesting Steampipe tech in there and pipes tech in there, etc. But to me, you know, if you really try to boil down that whole post, I think fundamentally it's just saying, you know, how we think about it internally all the time is, how do we help, you know, and treat our community like they're part of our organization? Like, you talk to them, respond quickly. You wouldn't ignore a message internally. Don't ignore one from externally, right? When you're debating a feature, debate it in public as much as you can, right? Have that conversation. Say please, say thank you, like be polite, use good manners. You know, and for Turbot, you know, a cultural value is sort of that fast, friendly, clever idea. And you see that, I think, in our community interactions, whether it's in Slack, where we take very seriously being, you know, constantly responsive and working with people. If it's in our support, you know, for customers who might be behind scenes because they don't want to work in public, that's totally fine. And we try to do the same there. If it's in our issues with people, we're trying to do the same thing, constantly trying to ask, how can we respond quickly? How can we do that in a polite, friendly, engaging way, you know, with knowledge, right? And if we don't know, say we don't know. And I think the more we do that, the more the community responds, right? And the more engaged they are and the better we are working together. You know, we talked already about Francois or Jose, like there's a reason we know the names of people, because we're thinking about it in that way. So to me, that whole post about how to manage that repos at scale, it's the automation I spoke about before, combined with sort of that human touch about, you know, just working with people like their peers, they're people you want to work with, and, you know, they respond to that really, really well. And for us internally, it's more fun, it's more engaging, and it creates a really positive cycle.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's one of the reasons why we were excited to actually come up with Steampipe and build an open source community, was to take all that pride and all that success that we have in supporting our customers on Turbot Guardrails and just bring it out into the public and work with folks in the open and be able to respond and have others help and respond, and to not be so closed off in our support. And I think it's one of our biggest features and highlights as a company and a culture. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, I think, you know, early you asked what the biggest contribution was or something. We were talking about the hackathon, but the biggest contribution we get from users is ideas. And sometimes they're small ideas and sometimes they're big ideas. And there's so many ideas that we need to be formal in some degree to tracking what's coming in and what's going out. And I think it's been nice to see us using our own tools to build our own custom dashboards to get into the information that we require to make sure that we can be responsive to people, that we can surface those ideas to the right people, that we do address things in a timely fashion, because it is important to us. But you know, if you really value it, then you have to go after it too. And I think that we have done that. And you know, it's great whenever I see a Steampipe dashboard that somebody built internally to solve a problem that we have, because it means that the tool is doing what it's supposed to do. And because we learn how to operate the thing and we learn how the user sees the tool at the same time. So it's been great to see that, you know, these things kind of grow over time.
That little GitHub graph not easy to create across 200 repos. Like, I mean, I'm not aware of other tools where we could get this information, but even in Steampipe, we ended up rewriting the plugin for better scalability, rate limiting, all sorts of things to get it to that. That's of course out in public now, and there's an improvement for everyone. But like the amount of levels of steps we went through to really, you know, make that stuff work is a lot. But it's great.
Yeah, and that was a great way to kind of cap off, you know, launch week is, you know, with our community in mind, you know, talking about, you know, our use case for how we help and support them, but then also, you know, some features to make them more aware of what's coming and what has come out with the changelog. So, so with that, you know, that's a wrap from a launch week perspective. We went through the entire week in detail. You know, it was our first launch week. I think, you know, went incredibly well without any major hiccups. So I'm really proud of what we accomplished this week, getting all those announcements out, getting all those features out, launching a whole new go-to-market with Turbot Pipes. So super proud of what we accomplished this week, and excited for launch week number 2 in a few months. Any final words? I'll give you to you, John, first.
That put me on the spot there. Yeah. You know, I as Nathan said, there's the launch week has given us an opportunity to kind of see all of the stuff that we've been doing kind of in one place. And, you know, I am grateful to be part of a team that's able to push through so much change and to have so many compelling features across the product set. And also to be a member of a community that cares to solve the same problems and work with us on them. All of the stuff that you know that we've been able to build. It's nice to be able to showcase it and kind of see it all together and kind of see it at once, because you know, there's a constant stream of work, and this has been an opportunity to take a step back, look at it all, and kind of celebrate it. So.
I think it's made us more integrated as a company, working together to produce this better focus on the job to be done for our users, telling that story, understanding that story, nailing that story through the products. I think has really helped and improved our products and improved our organization and the way we work, which is great. I've mentioned, I'd be a huge believer in iteration. How are we going to get better? This was launch week 1. I can't wait for launch week 2. I'm already mentally living in that space, so excited to get into it after a weekend, I guess, of some downtime.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you both for talking us through the week, and look forward to actually seeing you guys next week. So yeah, all right, thank you both.
Thanks,
Have a
Bob.
good day.